As a leader of a fast growth organization, what's more important, your customers or your employees?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're marketing focused or you've got a sales focus, you mostly likely say
you're going to say your customers.
Mm-hmm. If you're a big company, you're going to say customers because that's just the way it is. They see people as kind of commodities or interchangeable. Mm-hmm. They're very short-term focused, so they say customers. But what fast growth companies understand that when you really treat employees well, that they will take care of the company, they will take care of the customers, they will take care of the value that they're creating in the world, and they will create a culture that really does empower people around them. And that's where that feeling of ownership comes from.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leading with Audacious Confidence. And I have with me today, I'm so excited to interview Gene Hammett because I've been watching and listening to some of his podcasts, and he's inspired me, and I'm so thrilled to have him as a part of this this podcast today. So I'm going to share a little bit about Gene before we get into the discussion. He is a leading expert on high growth company culture and leadership. He has decades of experience with more than 40 million in revenue for the companies he has led and owned. Gene has interviewed more than 530 CEOs of high growth companies to understand the core principles of fast growth. He consults companies to activate new growth and reduce the high cost of ineffective leadership. So you see why I want to have him on this show. After 15 years of being a serial entrepreneur, Gene has built teams and taken many companies to 2 times and 3 times growth. He has worked with more than 24 companies on the Inc. 5000 list. And recently he realized the biggest drivers to fast growth was the ability for companies to create a growth culture and leadership that inspires ownership. And we'll talk about that. Gene is the best-selling author of The Trap of Success, a book about breaking through to new levels of growth. He has leadership insights and has appeared in large publications like Inc., Entrepreneur, and Success magazines. Since 2014, his show Growth Think Tank, formerly known as Leaders in the Trenches, has been recognized by Inc., Business Insider, and Entrepreneur for its insight on growth and sales leadership. So welcome to the show, Gene.
Excited to be here, Alicia.
Yay. So right off the bat, I am going to ask you, because you have been doing this for a long time, in leadership, not just with your own companies, but also helping other leaders to develop. What is your specific leadership philosophy?
You know, you said it toward the end there, and it's really this concept of leaders that can inspire people to have a feeling of ownership. The feeling of ownership is the key there because it is a feeling. It's not something that you can give someone ownership as in stock options or profit sharing and pay them based on how well the company's doing. And that's an external, but the feeling of ownership is an internal drive where people feel connected. They feel a sense of belonging. They feel empowered. And, all of those things really are important in today's world. It was important before COVID. It's important now as well.
That is so true, because when a leader strips that away from you, let's say you're working on a project and their input is more important than hearing what your input is. It makes you feel like, well, why am I even here? Like, what value do I have to give if you're not going to listen to what I have to say? So I love that, giving someone a feeling of ownership. And you have this history where you owned your own companies. You've worked in corporate, you've owned your own companies. What is the difference as an employee when you were working for someone versus when you started your own business?
The difference in what aspect, Alicia?
In the way either you were leading in a corporate setting versus now you started your own business and you're leading a team. Was there a difference for you?
The big difference is I never felt like an owner inside my businesses in the corporate world. I had 3 different companies I work with. One of them was massive. So PricewaterhouseCoopers is one of the bigger companies in the world at the time. And there's no way I could feel like ownership because I was just like some project manager, a cog in a wheel.
A cog in the wheel, right?
My first job out of school, I was so young and so unaware of what was going on. I was just excited to be, have a job for one, be doing some interesting work. And I learned so much. A lot of the work I do traces back to that. And that's been almost 30 years. And I know I look young, but
I know it's just a pup.
I even had stock options. So I had this sense of ownership through options, but I wasn't included in all of these major decisions. I was included in some. I was one of the leading sales reps in that space, but I just didn't have that sense of ownership across this. And as I started growing companies myself, I knew I wanted to create a different kind of culture. I wanted them to feel, really empowered. I wanted them to feel like I supported them. I wanted, I didn't have a word for servant leadership, but I did play like that for many years inside the business. And there were some limitations in that servant leadership model that I kind of tripped up on that I had to discover and grow beyond.
And how does that affect your confidence? Because I want to talk about confidence in leadership. And when you are working in another organization where you don't feel like you really have ownership, does it hinder your confidence in it versus starting your own business?
Every time a leader wants to, exert their ideas and options, and even say something as small as, why don't you send me that for review? I mean, they are help. Like it's about, the quality of work and about, it all being right. And, all those things are important. But every time you're undermining that sense of confidence. What if you truly trusted your employees? Would you be asking for that sense of review? Or would you have a different type of review that they could go through? I mean, I'm not saying that we're all infallible, that we don't need some kind of review, but every moment that you have an employee that you have to undermine them a little bit, you have to go, oh, but do you miss this idea? What about this part of the problem or solution? It really does take confidence away. And so I really believe part of leadership is to get away from managing the work, right? The work is the output of which we are doing if we're in sales, it's about, getting new clients. Those are things are very important to talk about and measure, but we also have to look at the other side. Most companies and most leaders don't take time to say, what kind of fears are you running into in your job?
That's
and having real conversations around those fears that allow them to grow beyond that and raise that sense of confidence. Because over time, if as a leader you raise confidence in others, they're going to be so loyal. They're going to fight for you when the time comes. They're going to stand up for you. They're going to put in the extra hours. Those things are really important as you think about building confidence inside of leadership.
Because that is another one of those soft skills things that you can help grow in someone, to develop that confidence, to know that they don't always have to have their work checked, or that they can come to you and with a new idea and flesh it out with you, instead of feeling like, I don't think they'll listen to me if I came up with a new way to do this. So, because one of the things that when we're talking about brain science and how do we use assessments and different things, because that's what I do with organizations, is what are you really assessing? Are you assessing someone's skill level, or are you assessing their personality, or are you assessing their ability to do something? And taking all those aspects as a leader, and then really understanding the strengths of your people and giving them that autonomy to do the work, regardless of how it's done. You might have a process and say, I want it done this way, but giving them that autonomy and that ownership, like you said, to do it their way and come up with a result, and then having a discussion around that. Do you see that happening a lot or not?
I'm going to tell you where I see it. So one of the things that I decided to do a few years ago was study fast growth companies.
Mm-hmm.
I really just got fascinated. I had a couple of clients that made the Inc. 5000 list. You're familiar with the list.
Yes.
I know you
Yes.
read it in my bio, but I wanted to understand what growth looked like in the terms of some of the fastest growing companies. The Inc. 5000 are privately held companies. So they're not, publicly traded,
Mm-hmm.
Big, huge, multi-thousand person.
Right. Like the Forbes list.
Yeah. They're not that big. But many of them are 20 employees, 40 employees, 100 employees, 500 employees. Some of them are even bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're not too terribly big, but they really understand leadership. They understand what people mean inside the organization. They don't want you to feel like a cog. And I started studying those companies and how they look at growth, how they look at people, and found that, the details behind it, that being able to pull back the data, and I've been collecting all this for years.
Yeah.
It's something I love to share and talk about. And there's many different aspects of it that are really counterintuitive to what's going on in corporate America, what's going on with really small organizations that have 2 or 3 employees. And those things are really helpful to understand, I think, if you want to create more growth inside your organization.
Yeah. And you talked about culture of these fast growing companies. How do they develop culture? How do you see them developing culture to really achieve that fast growth?
Well, what's really surprising is I ask what I call the impossible question.
Mm-hmm.
And the impossible question is, the answer is not really apparent. There's really a lot of there's only 2 answers to this, because I make sure people can't just give me a different answer, because that's what many people want to give you a different answer.
Want to give you a different answer. Yeah.
The impossible question kind of sounds like this. As a leader of a fast growth organization, what's more important, your customers or your employees?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're marketing focused or you've got a sales focus, you mostly likely say
you're going to say your customers.
Mm-hmm. If you're a big company, you're going to say customers, because that's just the way it is. They see people as kind of commodities or interchangeable. Mm-hmm. They're very short-term focused, so they say customers. But what fast growth companies understand, that when you really treat employees well, that they will take care of the company, they will take care of the customers, they will take care of the value that they're creating in the world, and they will create a culture that really does empower people around them. And that's where that feeling of ownership comes from. Mm-hmm. And so 94% of fast growth company leaders will say that it's employees first. Yeah. Does that surprise you?
Successful fast growth companies, it doesn't surprise me, because it all stems from people. And that's the biggest investment that you make in your company. So you should be focused on the people.
Absolutely. Jeff Bezos has kind of got a counterintuitive around this. He talks about being customer focused and obsessed. And, he's the richest person in the world, but he's got a business that it's unlike most of our businesses, especially the ones I work with. Mm-hmm. But, his business is there's a set of tasks that have to be done, and they just need people to do them. They've automated as much as they can. They've optimized this to a point. And there's things that they still need people to do, because they got to think and they got to move and all that stuff. They do time them. They time their bathroom breaks and all that stuff. But most fast growth companies are not like that. They need their employees to think. They need to use their head above the neck. And if you have a business where you expect your employees to think, then you want to make sure that you really take care of them. They're more employee focused. Mm-hmm. You asked me about culture. That's one of the biggest differences in fast growth companies. But I will tell you some of the other things that are kind of on the edge of that is they look at culture sometimes even before they have product market fit. Many of the founders I've talked to through my podcast, Growth Think Tank, I'm asking them, when did you first start thinking about people and culture? And they said, before we even had a product or an idea.
Well, that's what I really wanted to ask you too, is that is that culture designed? It's by design even before they launch. Like before we start looking for people, we design what it looks like. Yeah.
But many times it is, Alicia. And it really is a refreshing way to look at it, because they want to create a space for the most talented people to do the best work possible.
Right.
The most talented people to do the best work possible. And that doesn't mean that they follow it A, B, C, D. You actually want them to figure out their own path.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to give them the direction at which to take. You said the word autonomy, and that's part of it. But you want to empower them to share these ideas and feel safe around sharing ideas. Failure's acceptable.
Right.
In fact, encouraged across many of these companies. And that's very different
from
fast other organizations.
Fail forward.
Fail fast, fail forward. It's okay to fail. They celebrate failure. Some of them, I've had someone on the show not too long ago, they said, at the end of the year, yes, we have great teams that are celebrated. We have individuals that are celebrated, but we also celebrate the biggest failures, because we want people to know that it's okay to fail, because those failures, every time they can look at it and say, well, it allowed us to move forward in some other way. And that was really important for us this past year. So thank you to everyone that was a part of this team. And thank you to everyone that's moving forward at this kind of pace, because they know that people are so important that if they're afraid to fail, that they'll begin hiding. They'll begin
stop innovating.
To not innovate. You can't innovate without a healthy understanding of failure. So that's some interesting things that I've seen through my research.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you brought up the topic of failure, because that's another question that I love to dive into is, what has been your biggest failure and lesson learned? And how did that affect your confidence and allow you to rebuild from that?
So Alicia, all owners and founders of companies have had many failures, but one stands out for me that really did rock me. Mm-hmm. And without too much context, we can go deeper if you want. I'm not hiding here, but it's a long sordid tale, if you will. Mm-hmm. But about 10 years ago, I had a deal with my best friend. We had a financial contract in place, and I had paid him $3 million, and he failed to deliver on that contract. Wow. And so my business was put in a very catastrophic place, because I'd given him the money for the inventory. We had a product service kind of business, and there was no inventory. It was not delivered. Wow. And so 10 years ago, everything fell apart for that business I was in. We were doing millions and millions in sales, but now that all my working capital was gone and there was no way to replace what he had, I had no money to replace it.
Yeah.
It put me into dire straits. And from a confidence level, I hit rock bottom. Mm. I didn't immediately close the company down. We stopped doing business immediately. But I wasn't able to close the company down because we had to go through the legal battles.
The legal
recovery.
battle. Right.
And so it took a few more years.
And everything. Mm.
But for all intensive purposes, the business stopped like the next day. I didn't take another dollar in, because I didn't want to have any kind of fraud. As soon as I knew that this was not going to happen, or expected it wasn't, my attorneys kind of advised me and said, look, any checks you have right now, don't deposit them. And so it just stopped immediately. And I had to rebuild myself. I had to look at what was really important. That's when I became a coach. It was a few months after that when I really started that journey. It took me a couple of years, to be honest with you, to be able to get back in a place where I knew I could deliver advice, insight, wisdom, and really kind of support someone that was where I was a few years ago, because I had to rebuild my own confidence. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I can't even imagine taking that hit and then having to get up the next morning. And I mean, what did you do?
Well, it took a few days. There's some days in there where I was in Vancouver. So, if you want a little bit more about the story, I was at the Vancouver Olympics. I had an international sports tour company, and I was not sure that what was going to happen for a couple of days. And the day that the contract was supposed to be delivered on, I just got more untruths, as they say. And it just started to unravel. And this relationship that it was based on was just not going where we wanted to. And so I talked to my attorneys, and they said, this is kind of his advice to me. Is like, you're in another country and things are about to hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
I suggest you come home. Let's get our ducks in a row. Let's fight this battle from a place where you are in more control. And that made total sense to me. So it took me a couple of days to get out of Vancouver, and
get back
we
home.
got back to Atlanta, which is where I'm from, and really tried to dig into this. And so it wasn't an overnight thing, but within about 2 weeks, finally my wife, my lawyer, said, this is not going to work out. I don't care what you hope you have that it's going to work out. This was intended to break you. And I had to accept that reality because I didn't want to. I had so much optimism that this relationship was solid and that I had done the right thing. I had trusted the right person. But the reality was I had to accept that it was not going to work out. So the next stages behind that were kind of a little murky. When I say murky, I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of doubt. I was someone who had been running a multi-million-dollar business for many, many years. So I had built up this confidence, and it was stolen in one moment.
Just one moment. Wow.
And
Shattered.
It literally was crushing me.
Yeah. I interviewed a doctor not too long ago, and he's a pediatrician and was accused of sexual misconduct of the parent of a child that he was like attending to. And it was a whole false claim. And he ended up losing everything, his medical license, getting arrested, being thrown in jail. And he didn't do anything. This woman lied about everything. So I understand what you're saying. He was like destroyed. So trying to rebuild your confidence from something that you had no control over. You just, someone else took your life into their hands. And
one of the things I remember, the best thing I did through this process, Alicia, around confidence was I got centered on something that was beyond money because the money had been stolen from me.
Right.
And it was the fact that I had a business coach or leadership coach early in my career. And I remember how Linda made me feel. I felt listened to. I felt valued, which is a great thing in leadership to make people how they feel like that they belong.
Yeah.
But she helped me understand what my next step was in the business. And I would take that initiative. And I said, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. I want to make people feel the same way. I want to be that voice of wisdom. And I want to be that someone who can support them. And it's just, there's a missing element that I did not see as I got later into my growth career as a founder. And I wanted to be that person. So I started the journey to be a coach. And I have a very analytical mind. I'm an engineer by education. I have a very strategic mind through mergers and acquisitions, and strategy just comes natural for me. I can see the future in many cases, not always right, but in most cases I can see what's going on. But I can tell you, I got this training to be a coach so that I can work with the inner issues of what's going on inside of leadership. And that training was what I needed as a person to get back into the world and really connect with the confidence that I had and really go beyond that. I really had to figure out a way to go beyond that level of confidence to a new higher level. And it was coaching that allowed me to do it. So I knew how powerful it was because I'd lost everything. And then I could rebuild it through these conversations with almost a stranger.
Wow. That's huge, because leaders and CEOs of companies, they're people too. Sometimes we forget they're people too. They have feelings, they have insecurities, and they need someone in their corner to see their blind spots and help them get to that next level as well.
And we all have blind spots. We all have something that we don't see because of the way we grew up, the way we were educated, what we've seen in the past. And if we always do the same thing, if we always take the same perspective, if we always make the same moves, eventually it won't work anymore. And we begin frustration, and that frustration actually causes even more difficulties to get out of the struggles. And so advising leaders to get beyond their current frustrations and look at new perspectives is exactly what I decided to do. And that's what helped me rebuild my confidence, is being a part of those conversations over the last 8+ years.
That's incredible. I love that. So you love to dance. I love to dance. I'm not formally trained like you do. I know we're taking a side trip here, but how has dancing helped your ability to lead?
Uh, Dancing is something that some people either really love to do or they hate it. There's really not many people that are like, I could take it or leave it. There are people that identify as dancers and those that don't. Well, many times I'm always looking for a way to connect with the audience. And sometimes as leaders, we have to tell stories that allow people to connect, that's outside of the work, that's outside of even business sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'll share, if I want to help someone understand their own level of confidence, I'll share my journey of going from not a dancer, absolutely, to someone who is a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was late in life, and I can tell the story if you want me to. Do you want me to tell a little bit of the story?
I want you to tell the story, but I also want to ask you, before you tell the story, if you've ever used it. I know you've used it on stage speaking, but have you ever done like a workshop with CEOs in the room and taught them to dance?
So I have, and I've done this for thousands of people, and I've done it for 8. It's scarier to do it for 8 than it is to do it for a large group.
So tell me
I
the
don't know
story.
why, but I feel like you're being judged, and it's such an intimate experience.
Yes.
And I know it gets the audience, and I've done it dozens of times. I've never done it for less than 8, I think, but
I mean, have you had them like do the dance, like in a workshop situation?
So let me tell the story, and I'll tell you what.
Tell me the story.
So if you want to really understand your own confidence, you have to understand the role that your identity plays in who you are, how you see yourself. So where my identity was really kind of shaped was in this whole world of dance. So going through high school, I didn't have a gift to gab with women. I was afraid to dance, so I became a not dancer. And so I avoided proms and dances. And if I ever did go to these things, I stood on the sidelines kind of wishing I had this ability. And I saw my friends that had this confidence I just didn't have. And I said, that's just not me. I was fine with it. I didn't know what was missing. But as I went through college, I continued that pattern. I got out of college, still, I've had some girlfriends through this phase, so it wasn't so bad. Don't feel bad for me. But it wasn't easy for me.
Yeah.
I remember when I was at 26, I was at a family wedding, and I remember standing on the side of the dance floor. The band was playing, the drinks were flowing, and a beautiful girl asked me to dance. By beautiful girl, I mean my cousin. It was a family wedding, right? And she goes, "Do you know how to jive or jitterbug?" And I'm like, "Nope." And she's like, "Well, let me show you." And I couldn't get it right. She goes, "What do you know how to do?" "I know how to sway."
You know how to
right? The thing you do in middle school, that's what I know how to do. So let me pause here for a second. So sometimes in these small workshops or on big stages, I will ask the audience to sway with me. Because I want them to feel a sense of fear. Some of them feel excitement. They giggle, they love it. And you can see the ones that don't like it because you can see it on your face.
You took them right back to middle school dance.
It takes them back to middle school. But here's the reality. We should be comfortable enough to sense someone's fear inside of leadership and be able to have a conversation around what that fear is and allow them to move forward. Because if we don't, we're missing an opportunity to connect with the person, build trust, but also to help them move forward and empower them. And what's happening though is we focus so much on just the work and the milestones and all the things that we're measuring. We're not talking about that fear. So that being said, that's how I use it. But the reality of the story of my story really shifted in gear at 26. That was when the movie Swingers was coming out. And so every bar that I knew of around the country was doing these free like swing dance lessons. And I would go in and I would learn how to do swing dance lessons. And it was uncomfortable at first, right? As all new growth is. And a couple of weeks into it, I was like, okay, this is fine. A month into it, I started getting some really good foundations. And I was like, well, what's next? Well, I could go pay for lessons, but I was a consultant traveling the world. I lived in Toronto and was traveling back and forth. I just didn't have this. So being the nerd that I am, I rented VHS tapes of old 1930s. And so
Oh,
I
wow.
was learning these moves from videos that people my age had never seen before. And so I thought that was normal, and I would practice them on the dance floor. And I became a leader because I could show people these new things, right? I could
Mm-hmm.
show them and bring them into this world. I could invite them in this journey with me, and they loved it. I loved it. My identity shifted from that of not a dancer to a dancer. And so that's a necessary understanding to understand how important identity is who we see ourselves as,
Yeah,
who we attach
absolutely.
ourselves to. You talk about confidence. It took my confidence to an absolute another level. I was able to date pretty women. My
Yeah.
wife is gorgeous now. I met her at a club and I said, "Would you like to dance?" And that was almost 18, 19 years ago. So I was
You
able
had
to
a new
shift.
tool in your toolbox. You're like,
Yeah,
I can dance.
I could, and that was my go-to tool. I knew how to do this. Now, how does this relate to leadership? The story's simple. If we as leaders, we don't have to learn to be dancers. I'm not asking you, but
Right.
the evolution that I took was necessary. Just like leaders have to take an evolution from who they are today to that next level and even beyond. I've seen a
Mm,
lot of leaders that are good that first, with a small team, but they're not good with a bigger team, or maybe they're good with a team that's inside their domain of expertise, but
mm,
they're not a great leader when it's outside their domain of expertise.
right.
And if you want to be a great leader, you've got to learn to evolve, and the identity has to shift, and the confidence kind of comes along with it. And you also want to be able to do it for others. And you can't lead others if you're not willing to address your own fears and insecurities. And so that's one way I use the story of dancing inside of my
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, all the
It
story and how it
makes
puts together?
it makes absolute sense. And I I really love how you connect the two of the two of them, because there is a level of insecurity when you're stepping into something new. And Les Brown said, you have to be willing to, the person you are today, you have to be willing to die to grow into the person you're. I messed that whole thing up, but to be the person that you want to become. Like, you have to die. This person you are has to die in order to become the person you want to be. Something like that. I
And
have it
it's
written down
it's
somewhere.
absolutely true. Here's the reality. I ran a fast growth company. We had 5 or 6 million in revenue, and I was so comfortable, running that company. This is back when I was doing the sports tours.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw innovation. I saw where things were going. This is my cell phone. And it was 2005, 2006, when these things really started to catch on. And I knew, I could see the vision that things would change inside this industry. And no one was prepared for it. And I was like, I'm going to lead the charge. So I
Mm-hmm.
talked about it, but I didn't do anything about it. This is where I failed to take that invitation forward. I could see it, but I wouldn't actually step into it. And so I didn't have the courage. I didn't have the confidence to make those changes. And it required me to let go of the comfort of what I had
Mm-hmm.
in order to go after this new innovation.
And do you
And
think, sorry, finish
it
what you're
only
saying.
took me looking back, Alicia, of losing everything to say, what did I miss? What did I miss in this journey? Because I can blame the person who took the money from me and has
Yeah.
the money and spent it, but that doesn't give me any power. So I looked at myself and said, what did I miss through this journey?
Mm-hmm. Your
I
own personal
failed to have the confidence
responsibility.
and courage necessary to continue the evolution I needed, even though I was successful.
Yeah. Because that can sometimes separate a good leader from a great leader, is someone who is willing to then take that extra step. You see where it's going and you see an opportunity to innovate, but then you say, but things are good right where we are. And what I was going to ask you is, do you think then, because I don't know, I believe in God and sometimes he has a sense of humor, that
I think there was part of that.
it pushed you, losing everything pushed you into a space where you now have to step out.
I have accepted that story as a big part of my life,
Mm-hmm.
that I had to go through this journey. And my wife, you had mentioned her, how did I handle the really dark days of this? She said, you're going to look back on this and you're going to see this as a gift. Now, when you're in the dark days, it's hard to
It's
see that.
hard. Yeah.
But from someone from the outside, even though she was in the problem with me, because it was her money too, it was her business, it was
Yeah.
all of us were going to have to go through this. She was very wise in that statement. It took me a while to get it. Even Les Brown, when I had him on the show, it took me a while for him to walk me through some of the things that he discovered from when I told him my story. But I ended up writing the book, The Trap of Success, here because it really is. That's what happened to me. I was trapped by my own complacency, and I was drifting along, and I wasn't growing. I was complacent. And so the trap of success, I share in there too. You asked about the God thing. I felt like God may have been whispering to me early in life and in that business saying, what's next? What's next? And he probably even talked to me. He might have even said some stern words to me at some point in time because I was trying to get out of the business. I was looking at maybe how do I sell it and all that stuff.
Wow.
And I said, this next big deal will be the deal that like allows me to do that. Wow. And I call that my 2x4, the day that everything fell apart because I didn't listen to the whispers. I didn't listen to all the other stuff, but he had to hit me with a 2x4 for me to get my attention. And that's what put me on a different journey.
Trying to get out of something that if you don't, you're going to get hit by the 2x4. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you do hear those whispers of things. And before we end, I'm checking the time here. I know you have the 6 disciplines of hypergrowth. I saw you talk about the 6 disciplines. I want you to run us quickly through those 6 disciplines, what they are, and then tell me what your favorite is.
So the disciplines have changed over the years. And I probably haven't updated from this, but I know my work so well that I'm going to kind of give you where they are today. They're all very important. If you're missing some of them, you really do miss the opportunity. But empowerment, we talked about, also inclusion, which is really just, are you including others in the ideas, or you just giving the ideas and expecting them to execute on it? You also must have a mission and a vision for the business. Those things are really important to connect people together. It's bigger than just the paycheck. Really creating a space where people feel that sense of ownership. All this comes together when you have these elements of inclusion, and the other one is transformation. So if you take transformation out, it's where you have a company that doesn't believe in investing in their employees in new skills and development. In the very beginning of this, Alicia, you talked about the soft skills. The soft skills are really the money skills, right? We can get technical training. We can get project management training. We can learn how to get the work through faster. We can get sales training. But until we understand emotional intelligence, until we understand how to truly lead people, like lead, I think is one of those soft skills. We're missing that opportunity to connect. And people feel that sense of ownership when they feel like they're getting an increase in value while they're being on this journey with you. Yeah. And so a lot of those disciplines are that we just talked about, they all come from all my research with the Inc. 5000. Yeah. Those hundreds of interviews. And I've just been organizing this and working with people. But the big idea behind it is, do leaders inspire a feeling of ownership across the team? That feeling of ownership is dissected into those different pieces. And one of them is around team alignment. I created some scorecards to allow people to go through this to see where they are, that are absolutely free. I don't know if your audience is interested in taking an assessment around that.
Well, we'll put it in the show notes. We'll put the link in there for you.
All right. Sure. Well, so it's the team alignment scorecard. Yeah. So it's absolutely 10 fundamentals that if you go to teamalignmentscorecard.com, you can get the 10 fundamentals that fast growth companies know to be very important in this feeling of ownership. And it gives you really some guidance. It's not just a 1 to 10 kind of thing. It really shows you what a high performing team is aiming for when it talks about empowerment and, trust and things like that inside of organizations. So it's the teamalignmentscorecard.com.
I love it, because team alignment is so vital to that productivity and that performance, that growth in performance. Because when you have misalignment, either from the standpoint of how the team dynamics work, or even misalignment with the job fit, you can't have that kind of growth. You can't have that kind of performance. So it's all important.
Absolutely. The thing about team alignment I've found is most people have this picture of a rowboat or a crew boat, if you will, where a leader is kind of yelling and saying, let's go,
Go,
right?
yeah, row.
And what if that's not the right vision for alignment? What if we really need to be operating more like a team, like a baseball team or a football team or a basketball team, where everyone has individual skills and talents. They all know their roles and they're able to execute them really well because they trust each other in such a way. And we don't need someone saying row, right? You don't sit out there in the quarterback on a football team and tell him when to throw the ball. He knows for himself. He executes that play. He's empowered to know when to throw it, who to throw it to, and how to even make some changes when necessary. So most people get that alignment thing wrong. So that's one reason why I created this scorecard, to allow you to tune into a little different aspect of team alignment. That it's absolutely free for leaders that go through it, but we use this inside of our teams to help my clients go to that next level. And it's been very powerful over the last few years.
I love that you used the sports analogy, because I use sports analogy a lot for exactly that, for team alignment, and not just team alignment, but hiring the right people for the team, because you have to look at the dynamics of the team and make sure when you're bringing someone in, you're creating a new team in essence, when you bring someone new in, and how that dynamic is now going to shift or change, and how to create great performance with that. Do you use a lot of analytics when you are coaching?
I don't use that much. I don't use other assessment tools. I've created my own kind of thing, and I do respect them. I've seen Myers-Briggs, and I've seen a lot of the other kind of tools and assessments. I've just chosen to really look at fast growth companies, and I saw the pieces of that make them have a growth culture are different than what these things measure, these other assessment tools. So I've created my own. Now it's hard work. It's been a lot of research.
That's a lot of work. Yeah.
And I don't have the brand name recognition that some of these bigger companies have, where they have thousands of people out there, talking about how great it is and using them inside, many, many case studies. But my clients want to grow fast. Those 10 fundamentals are critical to them understanding how they work together as a team through that alignment survey.
Perfect.
And that's the way I've used that.
Excellent. So yeah, that's a lot of work. It's tons of work to pull that together. So I want to ask this question. Do you have children? I don't know.
I do. I have a 13-year-old.
You have a 13-year-old. Congratulations. My last child's a 12-year-old. He's 12 now. So I have two others, older, one in college and one in senior in high school. So my question is, what advice do you give your child about leadership?
So I think that being a parent and being leadership, that the dynamic between growing up a healthy young adult is very similar to what we want with employees. And so he doesn't get it yet because he's not an adult, and he doesn't get it. Your older children probably get this because they go out on their own. So one of the things is I really teach him about being intentional. I'm not very good at this. I'll be honest with you. He's 13. He doesn't think his parents know the answers to anything. And so I put it down to him, and I'm a sports person. He's not. So we've been watching The Last Dance together. He actually likes it. He actually understands basketball better, and he understands the dynamics of championship teams and all those things through watching Michael Jordan.
That was amazing. It's an amazing series.
So really the one word that comes down is be intentional. Be intentional about what you're going to do next, about who you are. Don't just let it happen. Because as an entrepreneur, I believe we create our own world.
Yes.
I have faith in God. God's on my team, but I have to create the future that I want to live in. And God's there to support and guide me through this. But I also think that we have to be intentional to a fault. And it gets in the way sometimes. Like there's times when I probably shouldn't have been so intentional, and like it come back to bite me. But 99 times out of 100, or even more often, it's very powerful to be intentional. And I think in leadership, one of the things I see that's dangerous is where leaders think, oh, it'll get better on its own.
Yes.
If we just don't have that conversation, or we don't look at the numbers or whatever it may be that they're avoiding,
Just hide in the sand.
that it doesn't. So being intentional is a big part of leadership, but we talk about all aspects. We talk about what empathy is. Like for a 13-year-old to understand empathy and really understand what it is, like, I think that's rare.
Yeah, it is.
So we talk about a lot of business stuff. And I even told him a story the other day of a 19-year-old who built a $1.4 billion company. And he goes, why did he wait so long? Like, he's 19.
So, and same thing with confidence. If you're intentional about what you're doing, then you can practice and you can have and build your confidence in what you're doing if that's what you intend to do. So I think it also not just works for leadership, but also in your confidence growth.
Absolutely.
Well, I have enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us again. Is there any final words that you would like to share with our audience?
The thing about leadership is confidence is such an important piece. And I really want you to think about how much time you've thought about your own confidence, how you've leveled up that, how you've continued to challenge yourself. Maybe it's through being uncomfortable or growing at times. Maybe it's, reading is good, but reading doesn't talk back to you. So don't think that reading is the only thing you need to do. The videos don't talk back to you either. But when you think about your own leadership, you've got to be willing to go deeper and further and faster than your team. If you want them to be confident, then you've got to work on your own confidence. And in order for them to absorb that from you, I think you're going to have conversations with your teams about confidence, about what their fears are that keep them from being confident, about the challenges they're facing. And those things, if you do that as a leader, you'll continue to evolve at a personal level, but then you'll also help your team evolve, which is true leadership, is helping them grow to be, is empowered and feeling that feeling of ownership across their work. And this will help the company grow because I've seen it happen firsthand. And one final thing is, if you want to get that scorecard, it's absolutely free. It's teamalignmentscorecard.com. And you can get, see where you rank compared to the Inc. 5000. Actually, it's like the Inc. 50, not the 5000, because it's the top tier of it. You can see where you rank within your teams, and it'll give you some insight around what to focus on next.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I believe that confidence is sometimes that missing piece that a lot of take people from one level to the next. You have to be willing to grow and step out boldly, like I say, with audacious confidence, to be bold and to be brave and really step into that. So thank you for that. And don't forget to be bold, be brave, and step out into what's possible for yourself with audacious confidence. Audacious confidence is the unshakable belief in yourself that's so brave and so bold that you step into what's possible for yourself, despite your feelings, fears, or failures. I encourage you to follow, subscribe, like, and share this out with your friends. To learn more about our guests, check out some additional episodes. Go to aliciacouri.com/leading with audacious confidence. Until next time, this is Alicia Couri saying, live your life bold, brave, and step out with audacious confidence. Till next time.